I wanted to do a video on borderline personality disorder because it's so fucking stigmatized. I was a bit embarrassed to make a YouTube channel.
Fuck it.
But I really want to educate people on mental illness because people are ignorant. BPD is also known as emotional intensity disorder, and that's the term preferred by the NHS. And it's also known as emotional unstable personality disorder. I'm not a big fan of that one. A quick summary of the disorder: it's not a personality defect because the name is misleading like that, so that's kind of why the NHS prefer the term emotional intensity disorder. It's best understood as a limitation of a person's capacity to regulate emotions. People with BPD have amygdala glands that are 16% smaller than regular people. That's the part of your brain that regulates emotion, so it's a struggle. Not everyone with BPD experiences rage and anger. You can have someone with quiet BPD, which means they act inwards instead of outwards, and they internalize all the emotions they feel. They experience the same symptoms as a regular borderline. People with BPD experience pain similar to how others feel when they lose a loved one, almost like daily at the minor things. And people with BPD feel emotions with a lot greater ease than regular people. After an episode, people with BPD most likely won't remember what happened due to dissociation, and they can bounce back fairly quickly, which can be confusing for people like family and friends. When a person with BPD tells you they're suicidal, no matter how often, they mean it, because BPD is horribly painful, and it's common for people with BPD to feel suicidal and then feel like reasonably positive a few hours later, or it could even be half an hour later. 2 to 3% of people in the UK live with BPD, and people with emotional intensity disorder are not attention seeking or just being dramatic. The intensity of their emotions is severe enough to interfere with their daily living. BPD is not impossible to treat though. There's like many successful treatments. People with emotional intensity will improve over time. BPD does not mean that the person has almost a personality or half a personality. The name suggests it would be like that. People with borderline personality are not always violent. They're more likely to harm themselves than others, significantly more likely to be subjected to violence or rape. People with this disorder feel emotions very intensely, and their emotions can last longer than feels comfortable, can change very quickly, and are often very overwhelming. This can have knock-on effects for your relationships, your job, your physical health, your self-esteem. Some look at ways to cope, such as self-harm or substance abuse, because when the emotions are so intense, having like a physical sensation or outlet distracts your mind, like kind of takes your mind away from your mind, if that makes sense. Though men and women can be affected equally, more women are diagnosed with BPD, but this may be because men are less likely to ask for help.
Toxic masculinity.
People with BPD often have difficulty concentrating, zoning out, and dissociation. Borderline personality disorder can cause a wide range of symptoms, which can be broadly grouped into 4 main areas, including dissociation, which I'll go into later. The 4 areas are emotional instability. The psychological term for this is affective dysregulation. So people with BPD may experience rage, often intense emotions such as sorrow, shame, panic, terror, long-term feelings of emptiness and loneliness. Often they have severe mood swings over a short space of time. They have disturbed patterns of thinking or perception, so cognitive distortions or perceptual distortions. Different types of thoughts can affect people with BPD, including upsetting thoughts such as you're a terrible person, you don't deserve to exist. Brief episodes of strange experiences. You can hear voices outside your head for minutes at a time, which they can feel like instructions to harm yourself. These delusions are often caused by intense stress if you're under a lot of like pressure. More prolonged episodes of abnormal experience might be hallucinations. These delusions are a sign that you're becoming more unwell. it's not necessarily rare, but it doesn't happen all the time for people with BPD, and it doesn't happen to everyone. More impulsive activities can be drug abuse, spending and gambling spree, binge drinking, having unprotected sex with strangers. Eating disorders are often common with BPD as they can numb you out from majorly intense emotions. Many people with the disorder compulsively change their appearance, so cutting their hair, dyeing their hair, a whole new style, as an attempt to fix their distorted sense of self. Intense but unstable relationships with others. If you have BPD, you may feel that people abandon you when you need them most, or that they get too close and overwhelm you, and you feel the need to isolate yourself. This fear of abandonment leads to intense anxiety for some. You may make frantic efforts to prevent being alone. Alternatively, you might feel that others are smothering you, controlling you, or crowding you, which provokes feelings of intense fear. You may respond by acting in ways to make people go away, like emotionally withdrawing, rejecting them, or using verbal abuse. These patterns result in an unstable love-hate relationship. It could be just with family and any like platonic relationships as well. Many people with BPD seem to be stuck in a black and white way of thinking. How many times can I say BPD? Relationship for a person with BPD is either perfect and the person is wonderful, you put them on a pedestal, or the relationship is ruined and that person's terrible. So a person with BPD might seem unwilling to accept any sort of grey area in their personal life. So for them, emotional relationships involve a go away and please don't go state of mind, and it can be rapidly changing. And a person with emotional intensity disorder often begin new romantic relationships very quickly. They'll put that person on a pedestal, and this kind of thinking is called idealization. So they think they found their soulmate, but problems arise when reality sets in because they realise the person obviously isn't faultless. That image they've idealised can come crashing down because they've rushed into it, and this period's called the honeymoon period. People with BPD can have loving, fulfilling relationships. On to diagnosis. Need 5 out of the 9 criteria to get a diagnosis according to the DSM-5, which is like the Bible for mental health. For example, someone with BPD could not experience bursts of anger but still fit the rest of the criteria. So they still have BPD, but they don't fit that image of having fucking anger issues. The 9 criteria is intense and stormy relationships that include splitting, feeling persistently empty or bored, a rapt view of yourself which affects your emotions, values, moods, and relationships, impulsive behaviour, anger issues such as violent outbursts followed with extreme guilt and remorse, extreme attempts to avoid abandonment, or extreme feelings of abandonment, suicidal thoughts and or self-harming behaviours, extreme depression, anxiety or irritability that can persist for hours or days, feeling dissociated from yourself and including paranoia and even amnesia. The causes for emotional intensity disorder are complicated, and they may include a combination of life events, psychological experiences and effects, and genetic factors. A lot of people with emotional intensity have experienced problems during their childhood, like neglect, physical, sexual, or emotional abuse. Not everyone with emotional intensity has experienced abuse as a child or in their lifetime. Borderline personality disorder, also known as the most stigmatized disease. There may be no other psychiatric diagnosis more ridden with stereotypes and stigma than borderline personality disorder. The stigma around BPD can be painful for people who have it. We must continue to have these open conversations because the stereotypes literally lead to people with BPD getting declined help from therapists because of what they've heard or the generalizations made. I've heard people say people with BPD lie, but lying and deception aren't even a part of the formal diagnostic criteria for BPD. They've probably just met one person with BPD that lies all the time and just kind of group them all as the same, but it's not even in the criteria, so that has just been pulled out of thin air. Often people think borderlines are manipulative, cruel, or even dangerous. And not everyone with BPD presents the same way. It's unfair to lump everyone who struggles with this disorder into the same stereotype. People with this illness aren't inherently abusive, just as people without it aren't inherently abusive. BPD is a complex diagnosis that's unique to each individual with it, each of who will have different presentations of the disease and histories with it, so to paint them all in one way is so illogical. Suicide threats, whilst are toxic behaviours, are not a ploy for manipulation. They are genuine expressions of pain and sometimes even just desperate calls for help. Self-harm is not done for personal gain at the hands of others. It's a harmful coping mechanism that's dangerous and serious. Cries for help like this aren't an attempt for manipulation. Study after study on BPD shows that it's not just a behavioural disorder, but it is one based on the very neurological and chemical structures of the brain. People with BPD are not intentionally manipulative. Their actions are often an attempt to avoid abandonment or seek validation. This stereotype is so harmful that it leads sufferers to be declined help from certain professionals who have misunderstood this illness. Not only are these not even part of the diagnosis, they come from a place of misunderstanding. Applying these terms to any person with BPD needs to end. The word manipulation functions as a shaming device, framing patient behaviour as moral badness rather than sickness. This one really pisses me off. Borderlines are just attention seekers. Because a key trait of those with BPD is impulsive behaviour, often they are hurt or feeling painful emotions so intensely that they feel the need to lash out or hurt themselves in a way that seems to be aimed at garnering attention. Alongside this, impulsive suicide attempts can be common amongst borderlines, and acts such as these appear emotionally manipulative. However, people with BPD lack the ability to control their impulses, therefore sometimes act out in ways that result of intense emotional hurt. BPD is not attention seeking, but at times just a crippling mental illness. They may crave attention, but also when they receive attention, they feel the need to escape and feel uncomfortable. Also, I just wanted to add, attention-seeking behaviour is not always manipulative. Sometimes it's just a subtle way of asking for help and support when at times you don't have the sufficient interpersonal skills and emotional self-regulation capabilities to tolerate distress. If you type in borderlines are on Google, this is what comes up. And I think that's why a lot of people don't like to tell or talk about BPD with people. Reading this makes sufferers out to be abusive and monstrous. Getting a diagnosis doesn't automatically make them fit into every BPD stereotype that you can find online and sites written by ableist arseholes. I think the most important thing to do is to educate yourself, because having BPD is a very hard illness to have in an uneducated environment. Realise that not all people with BPD are the same. Some struggle with their relationships more than others. Some of them can't handle their impulsivity. Some of them find it physically impossible to regulate their emotions. And some of them are a mix of all of this or other symptoms. Any social justice warriors? Health is a human right. Getting declined health care from BPD because of the stigmas and stereotypes is a social injustice. People with BPD experience social injustice in the form of stigmatization and prejudice, delayed diagnosis and misdiagnosis, limited access to care and/or qualified healthcare providers, ableism and prejudice against people who have disabilities and disorders. BPD is a disability. It's literally a mental illness. To put it simply, emotional dissociation is the unconscious suppression or distancing from one's emotions when they become too intense. This is common occurrence for people with borderline personality disorder. In fact, around 75% to 80% experience dissociation in some form. It can be difficult to understand. Dissociation presents a disconnect between your thoughts, emotions, behaviours, perceptions, memories, and identity. There's like a lot of examples of dissociation. Finding yourself staring at one spot, not thinking anything, feeling completely numb, feeling like you're not really in your body, like you're watching yourself on a movie, losing the plot of a show or conversation you were just focused on, feeling as if you're not quite real, like you're in a dream, feeling detached and far away from people. People seem mechanical or unreal to you. Like you're at a dinner party listening to conversations, yet you feel like you're above everyone and you're just watching them. Like you're not, you feel disconnected. Becoming very focused on a small or trivial object or event. Perceiving your body as foreign or not belonging to you. I'll put some helpful links and helpful websites below if you want to check them out.